It is the shadow that a year later still hangs over the Minneapolis Police Department. How many other Derek Chauvins might there be?
Well, to answer that question, you have to understand a discipline system where patterns are being overlooked. Here's Tom Lydon of the Fox 9 investigators.
If we could turn back time before Derek Chauvin was convicted, before the protests and promises, before the murder of George Floyd, could we have looked at Officer Derek Chauvin, a 17-year veteran, and seen the trouble staring right back at us? To answer that question, you have to understand a system that to many seems dysfunctional by design.
There is a kind of shorthand that insiders use when talking about cops with a history of misconduct. They're known as Brady Cops, a reference to a 1963 U.S. Supreme Court decision that said prosecutors must disclose to the defense whether a police officer has a discipline record for misconduct, abuse, or dishonesty. So it makes you wonder, how many Brady Cops does Minneapolis have, and would Derek Chauvin have been considered one of them?
The Fox 9 investigators have learned the Minneapolis City Attorney's Office has reviewed more than 1,700 cases with potential Brady issues, involving 244 Minneapolis police officers in the last 24 years. 86 of those officers with Brady issues are still in the force. That means 86 out of 727 sworn officers, roughly 12% of the department, have issues that might need to be disclosed if they testified in court. But before Floyd, Chauvin would have been under the radar. Consider his discipline record, known as a blue card. It shows 17 separate investigations, yet he was disciplined in only 2 of those cases, and only with a letter of reprimand. The other 15 cases were closed with no discipline.
Minnesota law says that the only time you can see complaint data for police officers is when there's discipline and it's final.
Abigail Serra is on the Police Oversight Commission, a largely powerless citizen watchdog.
So discipline is really the important word there.
And she says a semantic game keeps discipline secret, simply by calling it coaching.
And the city says this is not discipline. And this is sort of wonky, but to say it's not discipline is really important under the law, because when it's not discipline, it's not public.
Multiple sources tell the Fox 9 investigators Chauvin likely received coaching, and he's hardly alone. During a recent 6-year period, the city received more than 2,000 complaints against Minneapolis police officers. 90% of those cases resulted in coaching.
It's garbage in, garbage out, right?
Andrew Gordon is with the Legal Rights Center, a nonprofit public defender for the poor.
Is there a role for coaching?
I think there is. I think where it falls down, though, is when you're doing that to someone who just beat the crap out of somebody, right? I think where it falls down is when you've got officers who are being accused of assaulting individuals, whether that's a physical assault or a sexual assault, and you're putting your arm around them and saying, you know what, you did a bad thing, but it's okay. That's where it falls down.
What's the argument for coaching?
I think coaching is an important tool that we can use to improve employee performance, right? That's one of our most important goals, is continuously looking for ways to do what we do better.
Deputy Chief Amelia Huffman oversees internal affairs. She says coaching is used for minor infractions, known as Category A, outlined in the MPD's discipline matrix and a 600-page policy and procedure manual. It's things like an officer not activating their body camera or not using a seatbelt. She says coaching, which is used throughout City Hall, can resolve an issue in a few weeks, while an internal affairs investigation can drag on for months.
So as you sit here, you can tell me that we do not use coaching for use of force issues.
So I have not scrutinized every coaching document in the history of the Minneapolis Police Department, so I can't make a promise that we've never made a mistake. But I can tell you, as I sit here today, I would never condone sending a use of force violation, as you're describing, into the coaching referral process.
Complaints against Minneapolis police are dealt with in 2 separate tracks, through the MPD's Internal Affairs Unit and the Office of Police Conduct Review, or OPCR, a civilian unit under the city's Civil Rights Department. The heads of both departments, known as the Joint Supervisors, make recommendations to Police Chief Medaria Arredondo, who can impose discipline or coaching.
The difficult part of this interview is we can't talk about the elephant in the room.
You're right, I can't.
I know you can't respond in terms of Derek Chauvin, but to this issue where you see a blue card and you see not sustained, not sustained, not sustained, what should the public make of that?
As difficult as it is not to draw conclusions, it's important not to fill the vacuum in information with too much speculation. Folks get oftentimes very unrelated complaints over the course of a long career, and so I would be cautious about jumping to conclusions about patterns that may or may not be there.
But state prosecutors did see a pattern with Chauvin, and it's only because of George Floyd that we even know about it. Prosecutors wanted the jury to know about it too, and filed this memorandum detailing a pattern of abuse. At least 7 cases when Chauvin used excessive force. Like in September of 2017, Chauvin hit a 14-year-old in the head with a flashlight and pinned the juvenile prone with a neck restraint for 17 minutes, even after the teenager passed out. That case never led to discipline. It's unclear if the MPD even knew about it. But it was egregious enough that federal prosecutors have now charged Chauvin in that case with a civil rights violation. Think about that. The feds indict. The city coaches.
What really riles up folks like me, folks who are advocates for greater transparency, folks who want to see this information, is that it was so easily accessible to the Attorney General's office when they looked for it. It's just not being disclosed, it's just not being published, it's not being disclosed to defense attorneys like me.
And through it all, Chauvin was trusted enough to testify. The Fox 9 investigators learned that he was called to testify in court cases more than 36 times. And despite his secret history of unreasonable force, it doesn't appear a single Brady notice was given in any of those cases.
If an attorney had said about Derek Chauvin before Floyd, let me see what you have on Derek Chauvin, they would have been handed an empty file because it was all coaching.
That's exactly right. And that was my experience as a public defender. I would say, hey, this cop was actually part of a strike force that was disbanded for misconduct. There's Brady data. I know there's Brady data. And the city attorney would just throw up their hands and say there's no Brady data.
What is the incentive of the city not to discipline an officer?
Well, I think there are a couple incentives. The first is there's a narrative to maintain, right? The idea is that someone like Derek Chauvin is a bad apple, that the system itself is not fallible, the system itself works. I think if we were to see the actual data behind coaching, the number of complaints which really should have gone to some kind of more egregious form of discipline that weren't, I think the narrative that the system, the force itself isn't bad would crumble.
The conundrum for the MPDs with coaching seems to be coaching is not discipline, therefore it is not public. When it is not public, it does not appear to be transparent. And that is what everyone's asking for. Is that the dilemma as you see it?
I think that you're right, that there is a tension between transparency and all of the other kinds of values that we have in running an organization. If transparency is our paramount value, then we will sacrifice in some other areas. And so at this point, we try to balance the need for transparency with other needs, like coaching people to improve performance in a more timely fashion, increasing employee engagement.
In other words, who would work for a department where the slightest wrong move could get you disciplined? On the other hand, few jobs have the consequences of a police officer. The fact remains that a year ago, on paper, Derek Chauvin didn't look like one of the bad apples. The question is, how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? For the Fox 9 investigators, I'm Tom Lydon.